Amari, at 38 years old, with a biomedical engineering degree from USC and a respectable $118,000 annual salary, found himself living in a state of suspended animation. For the past 3 months, home was a dusty, 900-square-foot bungalow in Highland Park that his grandmother, his Mama Rose, had left him. The house, purchased in 1978 for a sum that now seemed laughably small, was his only real asset, a premarital anchor in the choppy waters of his life. His life before, the one that ended precisely 94 days ago, had been in a gleaming $2.1 million glass and stucco box in Silver Lake, a home filled with furniture that cost more than his 2012 Toyota Camry. That life had belonged to his wife, Nadia, and by extension, her mother, Delphi. This new life, defined by cracked plaster and the scent of old wood, was exclusively his. The eviction had been swift and brutally clean. It happened on a Tuesday in July, the air thick with heat and unspoken resentments that had been simmering for years. There was no shouting match, no dramatic confrontation. There was only the cold, polished finality in his wife's voice. He'd come home from a 12-hour shift at the USC hospital, his scrubs still smelling of antiseptic, his mind filled with the calibration data of a new line of dialysis machines. Nadia and Delphi were sitting on the white leather sectional, a $14,000 piece of furniture he was never allowed to eat on. Delphi held a porcelain teacup, her knuckles white. Nadia just stared at him, her face a mask of serene indifference. "Amari," she had said, her voice as smooth and hard as riverstone. "My mother and I have been talking. This isn't working anymore." He had stood there, his work bag, a simple $45 Herschel backpack, slipping from his shoulder. Delphi had added the final, crushing blow, not even bothering to look at him as she studied her manicure. "You're not welcome here anymore?" And that was it. No discussion. No therapy, no compromise. He was an employee being laid off, a tenant whose lease had been terminated. The home, he knew, was in her name, purchased with a significant down payment from Delphi's late husband's ample estate. His name was on the mortgage, his $118,000 salary, a necessary component for the loan qualification, a fact they conveniently ignored. He paid his half of the $7,800 monthly payment diligently, but in their eyes, he was just a renter with delusions of ownership. He packed a single suitcase with his sensible, off-the-rack clothes from Macy's and the few personal items that hadn't been curated out of existence by Nadia's relentless pursuit of a minimalist aesthetic. He left behind his books, his old college sweatshirts, and a half-finished project in the garage, a wooden rocking chair he was building. He had no idea then that the most valuable thing he owned in the world was a crumpled, forgotten lottery ticket, tucked inside a pair of winter socks in his sock drawer, a ticket he'd bought 6 months prior on a whim at a 7-Eleven on Figueroa. He only remembered to grab the whole drawer of socks, because winter in LA, while mild, still called for them, and he hated having cold feet. The first few weeks in the Highland Park bungalow were a blur of dust and silence. He spent his evenings after work cleaning, scrubbing away years of neglect. He ate his meals, simple, microwave dinners from Trader Joe's, standing at the kitchen counter. The silence was the loudest thing in the house. In the Silver Lake home, there had always been noise. Nadia's streaming yoga classes, Delphi's judgmental phone calls, the low hum of expensive appliances. Here, the only sounds were the creak of the floorboards and the distant wail of a siren. It was a lonely, hollowed-out existence, and he felt every minute of his 38 years. He was a good man, a successful engineer who saved lives indirectly every single day, yet he had been discarded like a worn-out pair of shoes. He had no idea what was coming. He couldn't possibly have known that his quiet humiliation was the necessary prelude to a victory so total, so spectacularly public, that it would beggar belief. But first, he had to endure the memory of how it all fell apart. We often tell ourselves that love is enough, that shared values and mutual respect are the bedrock of a lasting marriage. Amari believed that, with the earnest conviction of a man who saw the world as a series of solvable problems. But Nadia, his wife of 5 years, operated on a different frequency, one governed by aesthetics, status, and the constant whispering influence of her mother. Their life in the Silver Lake Hills was a carefully constructed facade of modern success. The house itself was the main character in their story, a 3-bedroom monolith with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the shimmering city. Nadia had purchased it for $1.8 million before they were married, using money from her father's inheritance. But the mortgage was a joint effort, a financial entanglement that Amari had seen as a symbol of partnership. He saw his contribution of $3,900 a month scraped from his engineer's salary after taxes and his student loan payments as building a future. Nadia and Delphi saw it as his rent. A typical Saturday would begin not with lazy mornings in bed, but with the quiet tyranny of Nadia's routine. At 7 a.m., she'd be on her $2,200 Peloton bike, its screen reflecting her focused, sweat-free expression. Amari would be in the kitchen, a space that felt more like a surgical suite than a place to cook. The countertops were a stark white quartz, a $15,000 installation, and the appliances were a suite of stainless steel Gaggenau products that cost, in total, over $40,000. He'd carefully make coffee in a $700 Technivorm Maca Master, using beans from a local roaster that cost $28 a bag. "Amari, darling," Nadia would call from the living room, not breaking her rhythm. "Did you remember to get the oat milk with the blue label? The one from Erewhon? The other one has too many stabilizers." He had, of course. A trip to Erewhon, the notoriously expensive organic market, was a weekly pilgrimage. A single bag of groceries, kale, quinoa, the correct oat milk, a few bottles of $12 kombucha, could easily top $300. He'd watch her make a smoothie with ingredients that cost more than his lunch for the entire week, blending them in a $600 Vitamix. He'd drink his simple black coffee, made from the same expensive beans, out of a plain ceramic mug he'd had since college. Nadia and her mother drank from a set of impossibly thin, $150 apiece glasses from a Danish designer. Delphi was a near-constant presence in their home. A widow in her late 60s, she had dedicated her life to managing her daughters. She would arrive mid-morning, usually unannounced, in her white BMW 3 Series, a $43,000 car that she replaced every 2 years. She'd sweep in, her eyes scanning every surface for imperfections. "Nadia, is the cleaning service coming today? I see a smudge on the glass of the terrace door." She never addressed Amari directly if she could help it. She spoke about him as if he weren't in the room. One afternoon, Amari came home early, excited to show Nadia an award his department at the hospital had received for innovation in patient monitoring systems. He found her and Delphi in the walk-in closet, a space larger than his current bedroom. It was lined with custom shelving that had cost $25,000. Nadia was holding up one of his suits, a perfectly respectable $600 Navy suit from Nordstrom. "I just don't understand why he insists on wearing this material," Nadia said, her nose wrinkled in distaste. Delphi let out a theatrical sigh. "Honey, you can't expect a man who makes what he makes to have taste. It's a matter of exposure. He comes from, well, you know, he thinks a Timex is a luxury watch." Amari glanced down at his wrist. He was wearing his favorite $89 Timex Expedition, a watch that had seen him through countless late nights in the lab. He felt a hot flush of shame creep up his neck. He quietly backed out of the doorway, their laughter echoing behind him. The award felt heavy and stupid in his hand. He put it in his car and never mentioned it. The dollar signs weren't just background noise. They were the language of his exclusion. Every object had a price tag, and that price tag was a measure of worth. Nadia's $2,400 Burberry trench coat, hanging next to his $120 jacket from the Gap. Her collection of $800 a pair Christian Louboutin shoes that she complained gave her blisters. The $8,700 abstract painting in the entryway that Amari privately thought looked like a spilled bucket of paint. He existed in their world, but he was not of it. He was a functional accessory, like the high-speed internet or the landscaper. He provided a steady income stream, a veneer of a normal, two-income household. But the facade was cracking, and the life he thought he was building was about to be demolished. The normalcy was just a stage, and his role in the play was coming to an end. The betrayal didn't happen in a single explosive moment. It was a slow strangulation, a methodical erosion of his worth that escalated over the final year of their marriage. The outrage accumulated in 1,000 tiny cuts, each one administered with the casual cruelty of people who believe they are entitled to everything. The first major escalation came during a dinner party. Nadia loved to entertain, not for the joy of company, but for the performance of it. She'd have a private chef, a young, trendy woman who charged $2,000 for the evening, prepare a multi-course meal. The guests were always Nadia's friends, gallery owners, architects, and other members of LA's creative elite. Amari, the biomedical engineer, was a curiosity at these events, a stable, slightly boring fixture in Nadia's otherwise dazzling life. On this particular night, a guest named Julian, an architect who designed minimalist hotels, turned to Amari. "So, Nadia tells me you work at a hospital? Fascinating. What is it you do exactly? Fix the beds?" The table chuckled politely. Before Amari could explain his work, designing and maintaining the complex machinery that keeps people alive, Nadia jumped in, her voice dripping with faux sweetness. "Oh, Amari is our little genius with wires and things. He makes sure the very expensive machines go beep at the right time. It's terribly important, I'm sure." The table moved on, but Amari sat in stunned silence. Wires and things. He had 2 patents to his name. He managed a team of 6 junior engineers. His work on telemetry systems for the ICU had been published in a peer-reviewed journal. He looked across the table at his wife, who was now laughing at a joke Julian made, her $5,000 diamond earrings catching the light from the $4,000 custom chandelier above them. In that moment, she was a complete stranger to him. He felt a cold, hard knot form in his stomach. It was a feeling that would become his constant companion. A few months later, Delphi's campaign to undermine him became more overt. She started leaving pamphlets for financial advisors on the kitchen island, all of them circled with a red pen. They were for firms that specialized in high-net-worth individuals. One evening, while Amari was washing dishes, a task he always did, as Nadia claimed, the dish soap dried out her hands, Delphi sat at the island, flipping through a copy of Architectural Digest. "You know, Amari," she began, not looking up, "Nadia has so much potential. Her eye for design, her social connections. She could be a brand, but she's held back by her overhead." Amari kept scrubbing a pot. "What overhead are you talking about, Delphi?" She finally looked at him, her gaze dismissive. "This house, the mortgage, the upkeep, it's a lot for one person to carry." The implication was staggering in its audacity. "I pay half the mortgage, Delphi," he said, his voice quiet but firm. She waved a dismissive hand, a gesture that brushed away his $3,900 monthly contribution as if it were pocket change. A fraction, really, when you consider the initial investment and the overall tax burden. It's a technicality. The real weight, the vision, that's all Nadia. You're stable. And stability is nice, but it doesn't build empires. The word technicality echoed in his head for days. His salary, his commitment, his name on the legal documents, all a mere technicality. The final, brutal act began with a conversation he overheard. He had come home late one night after a system-wide software update at the hospital had gone wrong. He'd been at work for 16 hours. The house was dark and quiet. He walked past Nadia's home office and heard hushed voices. It was Nadia and Delphi on a video call. He paused, hidden by the shadows of the hallway. "The lawyer said it's clean," Delphi was saying. "The house is a premarital asset. His name is on the mortgage for financing purposes, but he has no claim to the equity. We just need to dissolve the community property, which is next to nothing." "What about his things?" Nadia asked. "What things?" Delphi scoffed. "A few $100s worth of clothes and some books? He can take them. We'll call it a gesture of goodwill. The important thing is to do it quickly. The market is high, and I have a friend, a developer, who thinks we can get $3 million for this place if we sell now. You could finally launch your design consultancy without needing his little paycheck to secure loans." Amari felt the floor drop out from under him. It wasn't just a divorce. It was a business transaction, an eviction. He was being liquidated. He stood there for a full minute, his heart pounding a dull, heavy rhythm against his ribs. He thought about confronting them, about shouting, about throwing a chair through the $20,000 floor-to-ceiling window. But what would be the point? He was outnumbered and outmaneuvered. His love and loyalty were liabilities in their world. A week later, they executed their plan. That Tuesday, he came home to find them waiting, their faces calm and resolved. The scene was as cold and sterile as the kitchen. Nadia delivered her lines. Delphi added hers. "You're not welcome here anymore?" He didn't fight, he didn't argue, he just nodded, a profound and weary numbness settling over him. He walked upstairs to her bedroom, the one with the silk sheets and the view of the city, and pulled out a single, large suitcase. He packed his socks first, emptying the entire drawer. He packed his work clothes, his running shoes, his toiletries. He left the expensive watch Nadia had given him for their second anniversary, a $7,000 Tag Heuer he never felt comfortable wearing, on the nightstand. He took his $89 Timex. As he walked out the front door, leaving his key on the glass console table in the foyer, Nadia said one last thing. "This is for the best, Amari. You'll see. You were never really happy here anyway." It was the cruelest cut of all, because a small, broken part of him knew she was right, but it didn't make the betrayal any less absolute. He drove his 2012 Camry, with its 187,000 miles, away from the glass house and toward the dusty, forgotten bungalow that was now his only refuge. The 3 months that followed were a purgatory of quiet labor. Amari wasn't playing dumb in the strategic sense of gathering evidence. He was simply surviving. His life became a stripped-down routine of work and restoration. During the day, he was a highly competent engineer at USC Keck Hospital, managing the life-sustaining technology of the cardiac wing. He found a strange comfort in the logic of it all. A machine either worked or it didn't. A problem had a solution if you were methodical enough to find it. It was a stark contrast to the opaque, arbitrary rules of his marriage. In the evenings, he would return to the Highland Park bungalow, a small, unassuming house, on a street lined with similar pre-war homes. It was the house where his grandmother had hummed gospel hymns while she cooked, the scent of collard greens and baked macaroni and cheese filling the small rooms. Now it smelled of dust and disuse. He started with the basics. He spent a weekend pulling up the stained, threadbare carpet, discovering original hardwood floors underneath. He rented a sander for $70 a day from Home Depot, and covered in fine wood dust, painstakingly brought them back to life. He bought a few gallons of paint, a warm, neutral beige that cost $45 a gallon, and began the slow process of covering the water-stained, nicotine-yellowed plaster. He wasn't trying to build a new life yet. He was just trying to build a clean, safe space for his grief. He furnished the house with discarded items from the hospital that were being replaced. A sturdy metal desk for a small office he set up in the second bedroom, a few chairs for the kitchen. His biggest splurge was a new mattress, a queen-sized memory foam mattress in a box that he ordered from Amazon for $450. The first night he slept on it, after assembling the simple metal frame himself, was the first night in months he slept through until his alarm. He didn't speak to Nadia. She had sent one text message a week after he left. "Hope you are settled somewhere." It was a message of absolution, not concern. He didn't reply. What was there to say? He imagined her and Delphi free of his burdensome presence, toasting their success with expensive champagne in their pristine, minimalist house. He imagined them talking about the rising property values, the meetings with developers, the bright, unencumbered future they had secured for themselves. The thought was a dull ache in his chest, a constant, low-grade fever of humiliation. His only social interactions were at work or the occasional call with his sister Annika, who lived in Atlanta. She was furious on his behalf. "You need to get a lawyer, Amari. A shark. She can't just throw you out. Your name is on that mortgage." "It's complicated, Annika," he'd say, too tired to explain the nuances of premarital assets and the ironclad legal fortress Delphi had built around her daughter. "I just want to move on." He didn't want to fight. He just wanted to breathe. He fell into a pattern. Wake at 5:30 a.m. Run the hills around his neighborhood. Shower. Drive the 25 minutes to the hospital in his old Camry. Work a 10 or 12-hour day, losing himself in schematics and diagnostic tests. Drive home. Work on the house for a few hours. Eat a simple dinner. Read a book from the local library until he fell asleep. It was a monastic existence. One Saturday morning in late September, he was cleaning out the last of the boxes he'd brought from the Silver Lake house. It was mostly junk, old paperwork, mismatched socks, sentimental items that had no monetary value. He picked up one of his thick wool winter socks and felt a crinkle inside. He reached in and pulled out a folded, slightly worn piece of paper. It was a lottery ticket for The Wall, a new high-stakes game show on KTLA. He vaguely remembered buying it. It had been back in April, a lifetime ago. He and a colleague had stopped for coffee, and the jackpot was astronomically high. His friend had bought a ticket, and on a whim, Amari had bought one too, spending $2 on a quick pick. He'd shoved it in his pocket and forgotten all about it. The drawing wasn't for a specific date. It was an entry into a pool of contestants for a live television event. He almost threw it away. It felt like a relic from a different man's life, a life full of casual, hopeful gestures, but for some reason, he smoothed it out on his knee. The show was set to air in a few weeks, in mid-October. The ticket had a confirmation code. Out of sheer bored curiosity, he went to the KTLA website on his old laptop. He typed in the code. A message flashed on the screen. "Congratulations. You have been selected as a potential contestant. A producer will be in contact with you shortly." He stared at the screen. A potential contestant. It meant nothing, probably. They likely selected thousands of people. Still, it was a ripple in the flat, calm pond of his life. A week later, a young, energetic producer called him. They had a brief interview. She asked him about his job, his life story. He was hesitant, but he answered honestly. He told her he was a biomedical engineer. He told her he was recently separated and starting over. He didn't offer details, but the producer heard the magic words. A good guy, a relatable struggle, a noble profession. He was perfect for television. 2 weeks before the show, they called again. He wasn't just a potential contestant, he was the contestant. They would fly him to the studio, put him up in a hotel. The grand prize, they told him, had rolled over and was now at a staggering, unprecedented $500 million. He laughed. It was too absurd to be real. But he said yes. What did he have to lose? October 26, 2026, 8:53 p.m. The KTLA studio in Hollywood was a universe of controlled chaos, banks of hot lights, with a combined cost of over $250,000 beat down on the stage, making the air feel thick and electric. The audience, hyped up by a warm-up comedian, roared on cue. At the center of it all stood Amari, his heart pounding a nervous rhythm that felt entirely separate from his body. He was dressed in clothes the wardrobe department had picked out for him. A simple dark blue button-down shirt that cost $120 and a pair of gray trousers. They felt like a costume. He stood before the wall, a colossal, 4-story tall Plinko board. Green and red balls hovered in tubes at the top, waiting to be released. The host, a man with impossibly white teeth and a voice like warm honey, was explaining the final round. Amari had played a near-perfect game. His combination of trivia knowledge and sheer luck had been uncanny. He'd answered questions about everything from molecular biology, a topic comfortably in his wheelhouse, to 1980s pop music. Now, he had a guaranteed payout of $1.2 million, but he had risked it all on this final ball drop for a chance at the grand prize. "Amari, you are an inspiration," the host boomed, his voice amplified throughout the studio and into millions of homes across Southern California. A biomedical engineer, helping people every day, you told us you've had a tough year, that you're starting over. Well, America is rooting for you. Are you ready to change your life forever? Amari could only nod, his mouth too dry to speak. His hands clasped in front of him were trembling slightly. He focused on a spot on the back wall, trying to breathe. 17 miles away, in the glass house in Silver Lake, Nadia and Delphi were watching. They rarely watched network television, preferring curated streaming services. But a friend had texted Nadia, "Isn't this the guy you were married to on Channel 5? Nadia had scoffed, but she'd turned it on, and there he was. Amari. Their Amari. He looked different, thinner maybe, but he stood taller. He looked serious, focused. "What is he doing on that ridiculous show?" Delphi said, her voice laced with disdain. She was sitting in her usual spot on the $14,000 white leather sofa, a glass of $80 Chardonnay in her hand. "It's so common." "Shh," Nadia said, her eyes glued to the screen. She felt a strange proprietary annoyance. He was making a spectacle of himself. This would reflect on her. People knew they had been married. On the screen, the host asked Amari to press the button. Amari placed his hand on the glowing green circle. He took a deep breath. He thought of his grandmother's house, of the smell of sanded wood and fresh paint. He thought of the quiet satisfaction of his work. He pressed the button. A single, glowing green ball was released from the top of the giant wall. It bounced randomly off the pegs, a chaotic, heart-stopping descent. The audience was screaming. The music swelled. In Silver Lake, Nadia leaned forward, her wine forgotten. Delphi sat up straighter. The ball bounced left, then right, then left again. It ricocheted off a peg near the bottom, and for a horrifying second, it looked like it was heading toward a slot marked $100. Then, in a final, unbelievable bounce, it changed direction. It fell, as if in slow motion, directly into the central slot at the very bottom. The number printed inside the slot filled the screen. $500 million. The studio exploded. Alarms blared. Confetti cannons fired, filling the air with shimmering paper. The host was shouting, his voice cracking with emotion. Amari stood perfectly still for a second, his face a blank mask of shock. The number didn't seem real. It was a phone number, not a sum of money. Then, a single tear escaped his eye and traced a path down his cheek. He wiped it away quickly. The camera zoomed in for a close-up, capturing a raw, unvarnished moment of disbelief and release. In the glass house, there was absolute silence. The only sound was the triumphant music blaring from their 85-inch, $6,000 Samsung frame TV. Delphi's wine glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the pristine Italian marble floor. The red wine bled across the white surface like a mortal wound. She didn't even notice. Nadia's face had gone completely white. Her mouth was slightly open. $500 million. The number echoed in the silent room, a sonic boom that shattered the foundation of her world. It wasn't just money. It was a fundamental reordering of the universe as she knew it. The man she had discarded, the man whose salary was a technicality, the man who wasn't good enough for her world, had just become one of the wealthiest men in California. She looked at the screen, at Amari's face, a face she suddenly, desperately, felt she needed to see again. She fumbled for her $1,500 iPhone, her fingers trembling. She had to call him. She had to talk to him. It was a mistake. It was all a terrible, terrible mistake. The 24 hours after the confetti settled were a masterclass in strategic silence. While the world was losing its mind, Amari was moving with the quiet precision of an engineer executing a complex plan. He didn't celebrate. He didn't party. He followed the protocol the show's producers had for big winners, which mainly involved being whisked away by a security team to a private room. The first call he made wasn't to a friend or family member. It was to a number he had researched and saved in his phone weeks ago, just in case. At 10:17 p.m., less than an hour after his win, he was on the phone with Arthur Vance, a partner at a prestigious Century City law firm. Vance was one of the top trust and estate lawyers in the country, a man who specialized in handling sudden, massive wealth. His billing rate was $1,500 per hour. "Mr. Vance," Amari said, his voice steady, all traces of his on-air emotion gone. "My name is Amari Jackson. I believe you may have seen me on television this evening." There was a pause, then a low chuckle on the other end of the line. "Mr. Jackson, I was wondering if you might be calling. Congratulations. That was quite a show. How can I help you?" "I need to be a ghost," Amari said simply. The next morning at 8 a.m. sharp, Amari was not in a celebratory brunch. He was sitting in a leather chair in Arthur Vance's 40th floor office, a space with panoramic views of the city that made the Silver Lake House look like a guest cottage. Vance, a sharp man in his 60s with a mind like a steel trap, laid out the plan. "First, we create an irrevocable trust. We'll call it something innocuous. The Highland Park Legacy Trust. You will be the sole beneficiary, but I will be the trustee. All prize money will be claimed by and paid directly to the trust. Your name will not appear on a single public document related to the winnings." The setup fee for a trust of this complexity was a one-time charge of $75,000. Amari agreed without blinking. "Second," Vance continued, "we need to address your marital situation. You said you were separated. Was a divorce filed?" "No," Amari said. "She and her mother forced me out of the home 3 months ago. The house is in her name. My name is on the mortgage." Vance's eyes lit up with a predatory gleam. "When did you purchase the lottery ticket?" "About 6 months before I was forced to leave." "Excellent," Vance said. "Under California community property law, anything acquired during the marriage is considered joint property. She will have a claim. A very strong one." Amari's heart sank. After all this? Vance held up a hand. However, her actions, forcing you from the marital home without legal cause, the emotional distress, the clear intent to dissolve the partnership demonstrated by her and her mother's actions give us a powerful negotiating position. We will argue that the marital partnership was functionally dissolved the moment she told you, "You're not welcome here anymore." We won't fight her claim in court. We will offer her a settlement, a nuisance fee, essentially, something that makes her go away quietly. "How much?" Amari asked. "We'll offer her $1 million, Vance said, tax-free, in exchange for a full and final dissolution of the marriage and a legally binding non-disclosure agreement that prevents her or her mother from ever speaking your name in public again. It's an incredibly generous offer for her role in the marriage's end, but it's a pittance for you. It buys you peace. It buys you silence." The plan was cold, brilliant, and worth every penny of Vance's exorbitant fee. By noon, the Highland Park Legacy Trust was legally formed. Vance's office filed the claim with the State Lottery Commission. They also drafted a press release. It announced that the winner of the historic $500 million jackpot had come forward, but had chosen to remain anonymous, claiming the prize through a trust. The final piece of the strategy was insulation. Vance's firm hired a personal assistant for Amari, a calm, professional woman named Clara, whose salary was set at $150,000 a year paid by the trust. Her first duty was to manage all of Amari's communications. Amari's personal cell phone was turned off. He was given a new, unlisted number. All calls to his old number were automatically forwarded to Clara. The plan was in motion. The ghost was born. Amari, the man, disappeared. In his place stood the Highland Park Legacy Trust, an impenetrable legal fortress, and from within that fortress, he prepared to watch the consequences of his newfound fortune ripple outward and crash upon the shores of the life he had left behind. The strike was not a single, thunderous event. It was a series of precise, calculated actions, executed with the chilling calm of a surgeon. While Nadia and Delphi were frantically trying to claw their way back into his life, Amari was making them irrelevant. The first blow landed at 2:15 p.m. on October the 27th, less than 24 hours after the win. A press release from Arthur Vance's law firm hit the news wires. It was picked up instantly by every major outlet in Los Angeles. Century City, California. The law firm of Vance, Holloway & Stern confirmed today that the winner of the historic $500 million prize from KTLA's The Wall has claimed their prize. The winner, who has chosen to remain anonymous, has directed the full lump sum payout of $241.2 million after taxes to be deposited into a private trust. A spokesperson for the trust stated, "The winner is overwhelmed by this incredible event and requests absolute privacy as they and their family process this life-changing news." In the Silver Lake house, Nadia read the article on her phone, her hands shaking. "Anonymous?" she shrieked, throwing her $1,500 iPhone onto the sofa. "What does he mean, anonymous? He can't do that. I'm his wife." Delphi, who had been pacing the living room for hours, her face pale and drawn, stopped dead. A trust? A private trust. That's a legal wall, Nadia. He's building a wall around the money. She understood the implications immediately. This wasn't some naive man fumbling with his newfound wealth. This was a sophisticated, aggressive move. Who is he talking to? The second, more public strike came 2 hours later. A second press release was issued, this time from the trust itself. The Highland Park Legacy Trust, on behalf of its beneficiary, is proud to announce its first philanthropic initiative. A donation of $12 million, approximately 5% of the net winnings, has been made to the Los Angeles Veteran Support Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to providing housing, career assistance, and mental health services to veterans in the LA area. The beneficiary, who comes from a family with a history of military service, believes deeply in supporting those who have served our country. This was a masterstroke by Vance. It painted the anonymous winner not as a greedy recluse, but as a noble, patriotic philanthropist. It instantly earned goodwill from the public and the media. Amari's grandfather had served in the Army, a fact he'd mentioned to the show's producer. Vance had woven that small, personal detail into a powerful public narrative. The donation made Amari a hero. It also made anyone seen to be attacking him look greedy and monstrous. While the news was breaking, Amari's new assistant, Clara, was earning her salary. She sat at a desk in a temporary office Vance had secured, a phone and a laptop in front of her. Amari's old number was blowing up. She began to log the calls. The first one from Nadia came in at 9:03 p.m. the night of the win, just moments after he appeared on screen. It went to voicemail. Voicemail 1, 9:03 p.m. Amari, it's Nadia. I just saw. Oh my God, call me, just call me back, please. Tone, shocked, breathless. Clara listened, her face impassive, and made a note in a spreadsheet. N. Jackson, 2103, shock. The calls continued through the night. They became more frequent, more frantic. After the first press release about the anonymous trust, voicemail 8, 2:21 p.m. Amari, this is Nadia again. I saw the news. Anonymous? What are you doing? This is our money. Our money. You bought that ticket when we were married? You can't just hide it? Call me back right now. Tone, angry, demanding. Voicemail, 15:2:45 p.m. This one was from Delphi. Her voice was cold, menacing. Amari, this is Delphi. I don't know what kind of games you are playing or who is advising you, but you are making a grave mistake. A very, very big mistake. Nadia is your wife. You have a legal and a moral obligation. Do not force us to make this ugly. Tone, threatening. Clara transcribed the threat verbatim and highlighted it in red. The second press release about the veterans' donation sent them into a complete tailspin. They saw the money, their money, being given away. Voicemail 27, 4:38 p.m. Nadia crying now. $12 million? You gave away $12 million? How could you do that without talking to me? Amari, please, I'm sorry. For everything. We can fix this. I love you. I've always loved you. It was my mother. She got in my head. Please, just call me. We can go away, just the two of us. Anywhere you want. Tone, pleading, manipulative. Voicemail 34, 6:12 p.m. Delphi again, her voice tight with panic. Okay, Amari, okay, you win. You're clever. We underestimated you. Just tell us what you want. We can talk. Let's have a meeting. You, me, Nadia, and your lawyer. We can be reasonable. Just name a number. Any number. Just don't shut us out like this. Tone. Bargaining. Amari, meanwhile, was in his Highland Park bungalow. The TV was off. His old phone was in a drawer. Clara had delivered a new, encrypted phone and a laptop. He sat at the simple metal desk he'd salvaged, looking at the spreadsheet of calls that Clara was updating in real time. He read the transcriptions of their voicemails, their emotional journey from shock to rage to pathetic pleading. He felt nothing. Not anger, not satisfaction, not pity. It was like reading calibration data from a machine that had failed. The numbers were what they were. Their reactions were simply the predictable result of the pressure he was applying. The strike was complete. He had seized control of the narrative. He had insulated himself legally and logistically. He had established himself as a virtuous, anonymous benefactor. And he had done it all without speaking a single word to them. He had become a ghost, and they were screaming at an empty room. The cascade of consequences was not a single, dramatic implosion, but a slow, grinding collapse. For Nadia and Delphi, their world didn't end with a bang. It shrank, day by day, until they were trapped in the gilded cage they had built. The 47 calls that Clara logged in the first 24 hours were just the beginning. The voicemails became a daily, then hourly chronicle of their descent. After the bargaining failed, the messages turned venomous. Voicemail 58, day 2, 11:10 a.m. "You think you're so smart, Amari." Nadia's voice, now ragged and harsh. "Hiding behind your lawyers and your trust funds. You're nothing but a coward, a thief. You stole my future. You will regret this." Voicemail Westmindy 1, day 3, 4:20 p.m. Delphi, her voice shaking with impotent rage. "We will see you in court. We will drag your name through the mud. We will show the world what a pathetic, vindictive little man you are. That money will be tied up in litigation for years. You will never see a dime." They were empty threats, and they knew it. Arthur Vance had already prepared for this. The day after Delphi's threat, a legal courier arrived at the Silver Lake house. He served Nadia with divorce papers. Tucked inside the legal documents was a settlement offer, the $1 million tax-free payment, conditional upon her signing the NDA. The offer was both an insult and a lifeline. $1 million was a fortune to most people, but to Nadia and Delphi, who had been fantasizing about their share of $241 million, it was table scraps. They saw it as an admission of their claim, but also a measure of Amari's contempt. Their own lawyer, a flashy but ultimately second-rate divorce attorney from Beverly Hills who charged them a $25,000 retainer, advised them to take it. "His legal team is top tier," the lawyer admitted, visibly intimidated by Arthur Vance's reputation. "They will argue marital abandonment and emotional distress. They'll paint you as villains. It could take 5 years and cost you $500,000 in legal fees just to maybe get a slightly larger settlement. Take the $1 million, it's a clean win." They refused. Pride and a stunning lack of self-awareness made them believe they held the moral high ground. They countersued, demanding 50% of the winnings, plus damages. Vance's response was swift and brutal. He rescinded the $1 million offer. The new offer was $0. The case would proceed to court. "Let them spend their inheritance on legal fees," Vance told Amari over the phone. "We have all the time and all the money in the world." The social consequences were just as devastating. The story of the anonymous, philanthropic lottery winner was a feel-good narrative that the city embraced. But whispers began to circulate in Nadia's social circle. The friend who had first texted her about the show now avoided her calls. At a charity gala she and Delphi attended, an event they had paid $5,000 a plate for, they found themselves socially isolated. People would smile politely and move away. The final humiliation came from Julian, the architect who had once mocked Amari at their dinner party. He cornered Nadia by the bar. "I heard about what happened with Amari," he said, his voice low. "Winning all that money. And I heard what you did to him before that, kicking him out." Nadia bristled. "You don't know the whole story." "I know enough," Julian said, taking a sip of his champagne. "I know he was a decent guy who you treated like dirt. And now he's the anonymous benefactor everyone in this town is talking about. You didn't just lose a husband, Nadia. You lost the lottery ticket, and honestly, it couldn't have happened to a nicer person." He smiled a cruel little smile and walked away, leaving her standing alone, her face burning with shame. The financial pressure began to mount. Delphi's inheritance was substantial, but it was not infinite. The legal bills from their lawsuit were astronomical. The developer who had been interested in the Silver Lake house for $3 million backed away, spooked by the ongoing, now public, legal battle. They were stuck with the $2.1 million house and its $7,800 monthly mortgage, a payment that was now solely their responsibility. They had to sell off stocks to cover their expenses. The white BMW was replaced with a more modest Lexus. The private chef was let go. The cleaning service was reduced to once a month. Their beautiful glass house, once a symbol of their status, became a prison. The silence in the house was no longer peaceful and minimalist. It was heavy and suffocating, filled with blame and regret. They were trapped together, two women who had overplayed their hand and lost everything that mattered, not because of Amari's revenge, but as a direct, enumerated consequence of their own greed and cruelty. The world they had so carefully constructed had crumbled to dust, and Amari never had to raise his voice. 1 year later, the rain of the previous winter had given way to the perpetual golden sunlight of a Los Angeles autumn. Amari stood in the kitchen of his Highland Park bungalow, a mug of black coffee in his hand. The house was transformed. The old floors gleamed with a soft, warm polish. The walls were covered in fresh paint, and the rooms were filled with simple, comfortable furniture he had chosen himself. A sturdy wooden dining table that cost $800. A comfortable sofa from a local craftsman for $2,500. It was a home, not a showroom. The total cost of the renovation and furnishings was just under $80,000, a fraction of what one of Nadia's abstract paintings had cost. On the table in front of him was a stack of folders. He was reviewing the first round of applications for the Rose Jackson Biomedical Scholarship, a program he had established through the Highland Park Legacy Trust. Named after his grandmother, the scholarship provided full tuition and living expenses for 4 years to promising Black students from underserved LA communities who were accepted into STEM programs at USC. The initial endowment was $20 million. He picked up a folder and read the essay of a young woman from Compton. She wrote about wanting to design better, more affordable prosthetic limbs after her uncle lost a leg due to complications from diabetes. Her words were full of passion, intelligence, and a fierce desire to make a difference. Her grades were impeccable. He made a note in the margin, top candidate. Fund her. This was his new work. This felt more real, more impactful than calibrating a machine. His life was quiet, but it was full. He had resigned from his job at the hospital a few months after the win, but he still volunteered there twice a week, mentoring the junior engineers he had once managed. He spent his days reading, working on the scholarship fund, and taking long walks. His 2012 Camry was gone, replaced by a new but unassuming $55,000 electric Rivian truck. His $89 Timex was still on his wrist. Clara, his assistant, had become an indispensable part of his life, managing the trust's affairs with quiet efficiency. The legal battle with Nadia and Delphi had ended 6 months ago. As Vance predicted, they had run out of money and conviction. They accepted a final settlement of $250,000, a fraction of the original offer, most of which was immediately consumed by their legal fees. They had sold the Silver Lake house at a loss to a flipper, just to escape the crushing mortgage. The last Amari had heard, they had moved into a small condo in the valley. Their social circle vanished, their wealth and status a bitter memory. He had one final, unexpected encounter. A few weeks ago he had been at Griffith Observatory, looking out at the city as the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. He heard a hesitant voice behind him. "Amari?" He turned. It was Nadia. She looked diminished. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by simple jeans and a sweater. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. She was alone. I just wanted to say I'm sorry," she said, her voice barely a whisper. She wouldn't meet his eyes. "For everything. The way I treated you. The things I said. My mother. We were wrong. So wrong. Amari looked at her, at this woman who had been the center of his world, and felt a surprising lack of anger. There was only a quiet, sad finality. He had forgiven her long ago, not for her sake, but for his. Holding on to that bitterness was like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. "I hope you find peace, Nadia," he said, and the words were true. He wished her no ill will. He also wished her nothing at all. He turned back to the sunset, a silent signal that the conversation was over. After a moment, he heard her footsteps retreating, and now here in his sun-drenched kitchen, he felt a profound sense of peace. He had learned the hardest lesson of all, that some people see relationships as transactions and love as leverage. They measure a person's worth in dollars and cents, by the shine on their shoes or the brand of their car. They had looked at him and seen a technicality, a small number on a balance sheet that was holding them back. They never saw the man. True wealth, he now understood, had nothing to do with the number in a bank account. It was in the purpose you found, in the community you built, in the quiet satisfaction of a life lived with integrity. It was the legacy of his grandmother's love, embodied in this small house now reborn. It was the future he was building for a young woman from Compton who dreamed of changing the world. It was the freedom to walk in a park and watch the sunset, a ghost to those who didn't deserve him, and fully present in a life he had built for himself. What do you think is the true measure of a person's wealth? Is it the money they have, or the good they do with it? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and please remember to subscribe to Love Beyond Pride for more stories of justice and new beginnings.